content over everything.
Is it rolling? Assalamu alaikum, dhammaan kusoo dhawaada Rise Projects. Aad baa umahadsantihiin intaad na sugayseen as well. Maanta runtii waxaan isugu nimid arrin muhiima in laga hadlo oo ku saabsan waxaan loo yaqaan knife crime oo runtii community-gana aad u saameeyey. Inshallah presentation baan samayn doonaa, and then inama kaloo meesha nala jooga maanta oo ka mid yihiin Khalid iyo Abdi Pani oo ka socda urur la yiraahdo Somali Speakers ayaa nala jooga, iyaguna way hadli doonaan inshallah. And also waxaa nala jooga urur la yiraahdo Content Over Everything oo duubi doona maxaan ku dhahdaa barnaamijkan. Marka af Soomaaliga waan yar bedel Ingiriisi baan ku hadli doonaa intaanu bilaabi doona inshallah. Marka aad baa umahadsantihiin, of course, thank you so much for coming to today's event. And it's really about knife crime in the Somali community specifically, and more specifically within Haringey as well. I think it's a timely event, a much needed event, wax loo baahan yahay weeyaan. And also, maxaan ku dhahdaa, it's something that's definitely had a big, massive impact on our community, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And thank you so much for coming to this timely event. And next slide, please. So just very briefly, in terms of like housekeeping rules and things like that, obviously if there's a fire or anything like that, the door's through there, toilets out the back, just to let everybody know. So we'll do introductions and then I'll get on with the presentation. And then what we'll do is we'll have a small group discussions, two group discussions inshallah, and then we'll feedback afterwards as well. And then finally we'll draw some conclusions about today's event. So firstly, are young Somali people involved in serious youth violence and gangs? This is really a rhetorical question, but I think it's a question with answers, as demonstrated here. There's a belief that young Somali, the Somali community in London is associated with growing gang and knife crime. This is something that's been experienced by a lot of people in the community. And also, there's been a high number of incidences, particularly high-profile incidences, where there's been gang-related activities have been attributed to the Somali community in London, and especially young Somali people. Young Somali men are involved in drug dealing, antisocial behaviour and serious youth violence. This is a reality. This is not something we can't really skirt around. And it's something that's been experienced by the young people themselves, but also their families and also the wider community as well. And I think it's also really important to note that not only are young Somali men victims, but very often they're also perpetrators of serious youth violence. And in a lot of the incidences where a young Somali man has been killed, a lot of the times the perpetrator is also Somali. So in terms of the research that we've been compiling over the last 3 years, in 2017, 8 young Somali men were killed in London. In last year, 2018, 9 young Somali men were killed in London. And just this year, 10 young Somali men have been killed in London. So if we go on to the next slide, you can see the names of the young people who've been fatally stabbed. As you can see, it's quite harrowing. Quite a large number of them are teenagers. The average age, I would say, is probably 19 or 20 years old. And as you can see from the slide here, it's really every part of London, some Haringey, Camden in particular, and also other parts of London as well. So it's something that's had a massive impact on our community. And also the biggest issue for our community more than anything is the disproportionality of these fatal incidences. So obviously the Somali community doesn't have its own ethnic monitoring category, but overall it's been estimated that the Somali community constitute about 0.45% of the entire UK population. And yet, if we look at the numbers here today, you can see there's a massive disproportionality, which is something really, really concerning. So it's usually 10 to 7% or 7 to 10% in London, and also in other cities like Bristol. There's been incidences there as well, in Liverpool, in Manchester, and other bigger cities in the UK. That's also had a big impact. So yeah, if we move on to the next one, please. And also, if you just look at this interesting graph, the vast majority of the young people who have been fatally stabbed are teenagers. So you can see the number of knife crime incidences was at its highest in 2008, and then it went down significantly. But over the last, since 2015, 16, 17 and 18 and this year, you can see the numbers are increasing as well. Next slide, please. So what are some of the causes of the conflict and violence within our community, but also the wider community as well? I think it's really important to understand that a lot of this serious youth violence is over drug dealing, and very often disputes over drug territory or drug marketplaces. The idea that, in the past there was the idea that there were postcode wars, or young people repping a particular area, but that's not really the case anymore, because these postcodes have more or less become demarcated in terms of a particular marketplace or a territory that's controlled by a criminal gang. In some instances, there's the retaliation of family members. So, for example, a member of a particular group might be stabbed, and then someone else might go and avenge that particular individual who was fatally stabbed. Sometimes it can be something as simple as personal insults, disrespect, and and things like that, or someone potentially harming or having an impact on your personal honor. And sometimes it's the incitement of violence and things like drill music, which has definitely had an impact. And also, quite a lot of the time, it's really about being at the wrong place at the wrong time. I think it's also very important to stress that the causes that I've listed here are merely quite a simplistic list of things. It's not necessarily what the actual cause is, but it's also important to understand that a lot of the things I've listed here for the purposes of this conference today is just a very simplified idea of what causes conflict and violence within our community. So why are young Somali men turning to gangs and also youth violence? A large number of young Somali men experience a sense of alienation from the UK, and also often struggle for a sense of identity. Somalis will face a ladder of disadvantage, where a community that's Muslim, black, but also refugee or the children of refugees. So all these have a big impact in terms of our life chances. And also being involved with your friends or being involved with a gang, for example, might be a way of coping with racism a lot of the times and developing a sense of identity that you might not be able to find elsewhere. And also, a lot of the young people go out there to seek places, to find belonging, and might just end up being involved in criminal activities and becoming exploited as well. So a lot of the issues that young people face also comes down to the fact that there's a lot of issues at home. Parents and family breakdown mean that a lot of the young people cannot find the support and the peace that they need at home, so they would turn to friends for advice. And sometimes this friend might not necessarily be a friend with good intentions, but someone who has ulterior motives. And a lot of the young people have been groomed and have become involved in county lines. And also, I think it's really important to stress that materialism and the need to have the latest fashion trends and items and things like that definitely has a big impact on why young people get involved in stealing, in terms of like keeping up with their peers, of having the latest £180 Air Jordan trainers, for example. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, this isn't kind of like a complete list, but just if we go through why, how Somali gangs have formed in London. In the early 90s and the 2000s, a lot of the young people would group together within their communities, often for protection against racial attacks, for example, or for safety for their local area. And then around the mid 2000s, there was an increase in antisocial behaviour. A lot of the young people were hanging around late at night, just loitering, and potentially controlling a particular area, maybe the state that they live in or a particular postcode. And then the start of this decade, really what's happened is the emergence of formalized gangs, which are often run like businesses. And it's no longer a case where the ethnic identity of the young person matters, but as long as, it's composed of the wider community. And also many Many of the individuals involved in this often have reduced visibility, so they would often use young people to do the drug dealing for them to avoid police and enforcement measures. And also, it's no surprise that a lot of young people have been groomed and have become involved in county lines where they would, go out of London to go to like home counties or even beyond in places the south coast and also in the north of England where they would get involved in county lines. And also more recently there's been the involvement of women and young girls who are involved in this through CSC, but also very often just to be used really to set up attacks on rivals. So that's the research that we've done. So in terms of the lived experiences of the Somali community in Haringey, the community already live in existing areas of poverty, Turnpike Lane being one of them, Northumberland Park, Bruce Grove, West Green Road, St Anne's. All these areas have a higher level of deprivation. And if we just very briefly go to the next slide, you would see a picture of Haringey, which really shows that Haringey is a borough of stark social inequalities. And if you look at the darker blue, places like Wahart Lane and Northumberland Park and Bruce Grove and Tottenham Green, those are the more or the most deprived areas in the borough, but also across the UK as well. And if you see the western parts of the borough, places like, for example, Hornsey, well, not so much Hornsey. Hornsey is actually coloured blue there, but places like Alexandra and Fortis Green and Highgate and Crouch End, there's less deprivation, which means there's less likelihood of a young person being potentially getting involved in gangs. So if we go back, and also there's high health inequalities in Haringey, so the east versus west dynamic is important. The community also faces high levels of unemployment, but also often more worryingly, high levels of underemployment. So a lot of the young people who go on to university and who study often find themselves working minimum wage jobs through lack of opportunity. Sometimes this is perceived, but also sometimes this is the lived experience of many of the young people. And also another big issue really, which causes a lot of issues within our community, is overcrowding in the house, and also high housing mobility, where very often families are moved across the borough and sometimes out of borough as well, and also out of London sometimes, and which completely, uproots the family's connections to the community, the schooling, and also links to the wider community as well. And also there's a serious lack of engagement from service providers who often label the Somali community as being really hard to reach, and they use terms like seldom heard groups and hard to reach communities, which is not really the case, because the Somali community is very visible in Haringey. We are, taxpayers. We live in this borough. We are very much an established community, but I think service providers, particularly the council, have to be more forthcoming and more direct in terms of how they engage with the community. And also this leads on to my next point, which is really about the lack of the invisibility that the community faces is down to the fact that the community doesn't have its own ethnic monitoring category. So whenever, the census is done, for example, in 2000, the 2011 census tells us there's about 3,200 Somali people in Haringey. An independent research, which was commissioned by the council 2 years later, has found that there were 5,000 Somali people in Haringey. And the school census shows there's about 1,500 Somali children in the Haringey school system. So all these numbers are very often conflicting, and also it's a big issue because if we don't know if we don't have numbers around the community or how many Somali people live in the community, then it's really difficult to be able to allocate specific provisions to people. And also it's really important to mention that within our own community, a lot of the times people might tick black other, or maybe put Somali or Somaliland or something else, or something like that. So it's really important that the community itself is hindering its own ability to be counted. And also there's massive incidences of youth violence and antisocial behaviour, as we've already mentioned, which then results in a high number of young people who are not in education, employment or training, and also high school exclusion, and also lack of Somali role models in Haringey within key positions. but also it's really important to ask, where are they? Once a person becomes quite successful in our community, they have a tendency of moving up, as it were, and then kind of, forward, not having much connection with the community. So it's really important that those people who have the potential to be role models need to come back into the community and help wherever they can. Next slide, please. So I've already mentioned this very briefly, but our community is often seen as a hard-to-reach community. And very often there's a reactive attitude that comes from policymakers and service providers. Instead of proactively engaging with the community, something happens, everybody's running around. Before that happens, we need to be able to, or rather they need to be able to have a proactive approach in how they deal with the Somali community. And also the Somali community was specifically mentioned in the Haringey youth strategy. It says here, as I've highlighted, particular communities such as the Somali community need more provisions, for example, and targeted provisions at specific locations. This is a 5-year program, so I guess it might be too early to call the council to account on this, but it's also important that no steps have up until now been made. And also there's been a lack of support from the council in terms of engaging with the community. So this is something known as the schools to prison pipeline. We'll get onto this later on, but the schools to prison pipeline is really what causes knife crime within our community. So it's really, young people being pushed out of the school system and into the criminal justice system. And that's definitely something we will expand on during today's discussion. But it's also important to talk about the family and the high levels of poverty and social deprivation that our community faces, which has had a big, massive impact. So 8 out of 10 Somali peoples live in poor households, and the number of young Somali people receiving free school meals is at 82%. This was conducted a couple of years ago. We've already also mentioned the high housing and mobility, which has the family moving around at the whims of local authorities. And also families residing in overcrowding housing leads to educational underachievement, especially when the young person doesn't have the space to study, and they often share the space with their siblings, and that can result in aggressive behaviour, which then manifests itself in the young person being excluded from the school. It's also really important to note that there's a parental disengagement and lack of awareness of the English school system that a lot of Somali parents faced. I think that's definitely improved over the years, but it's really important to be able to stress that point as well. And some parents, and not all parents, I don't want to generalize, but some parents have missed, the important events such as Parents' Evening, for example. And also, a lot of the times, the young person translates on behalf of the parent, changes the dynamic between the parent and the young person. So that's definitely something that's impacted on our community. Next slide, please. And also, this is something we've talked about quite a lot during our community engagement meetings, but there's definitely a massive intergenerational gap within our community where, the parents are speaking Somali or Arabic or other European languages at home, and a lot of the young people, especially the ones who grew up here, are speaking English. And this causes, it has a big impact on the communication that the young person and their parents have. And that's something to definitely, something that's impacted on our community. Next slide, please. And also school exclusions. A lot of research has been done on this, and one research which was conducted last year by Race on the Agenda showed informal exclusion disproportionately affects BAME students, especially those from Somali or Roma, Gypsy or Irish traveller backgrounds. And also teachers often stereotyping Somali boys and also Somali girls as being quite difficult. This definitely increases exclusion as well. And also it's been found that 1/3 of all excluded students get involved in petty crime, delinquency, vandalism, and also substance misuse as well. And I think it's, again, very important to look inwards and understand that we need more Somali parent governors, more Somali teachers, which I'm sure there's many over the last 10 years. Mentors. So one of the activities that we've been working on is going into local schools in Haringey and also in Camden as well more recently, and delivering our personal development mentoring program. And also, as I mentioned very briefly, the intergenerational gap and conflict that the child and their parent have as well. And also, sometimes parents have unrealistic expectations of their children, which it definitely increases pressure on the child to succeed. So it might be the case where the child just gives up very, very quickly or doesn't feel the need to do any of that. So what happens when the young person finishes school, if they haven't been excluded or sent to a Peru before that? So already, you know, they're Muslim, they're black, and also they're either refugees or children of refugees. So that's already a massive ladder of disadvantage. The fact that there's high levels of poverty and deprivation in Haringey, particularly East Haringey, is also a worrying concern. The fact that a lot of young people get criminal records within their first year of school is also, once they've finished school and gone on to college, they might get involved in criminal activities and get criminal convictions. That's definitely a big issue. A lot of young people finish school with very minimal qualifications, and that has a big impact on their life outcomes. The lack of positive role models and youth provisions have been completely, decimated really due to austerity and other measures. So in Haringey, there's only one youth club, as far as I know, and that's at Bruce Grove in Tottenham. Also, the not being part of a network. A lot of our community members are not part of a particular network where people are able to kind of give each other support, and that's one of the things we've definitely been doing through our mentoring programs. And also, a lot of the times there might not be an incentive to work a normal job. So, you know, the idea that you can get quick money from drug dealing or taking shortcuts is definitely something to think about as well. And also the large number of young people who are part of the NEET community, who are not in education, employment or in training, is something that's really worrying as well. I think it's also important to talk about the relationship that young Somali people have with the Met Police, particularly in Haringey and also other London boroughs. Once a young person already lives in a deprived area, such as Turnpike Lane, Bruce Grove, Wood Green, West Green, all these areas have high levels of crime and also high levels of youth violent incidences. There's a higher chance of the young person becoming, vulnerable to that. The use of, the excessive use, I should say, of stop and search, and many young people feeling that they're constantly under surveillance is something that's really worrying. And again, in terms of like looking within our own community, young people do not know their rights. They do not know how to speak to the police or any other law enforcement official. Very often they might get angry, and then that causes more issues between them and the police. And it's also been found that, through people's experiences and the research that we've done, that the Met Police stereotype young Somali people as criminals. Then again, they're more likely to be stopped and searched, especially when, Section 60 is used, for example. And there's also a big issue within our community of shunning what we perceive to be criminals. And it's really important that we, support our young people. And, people make mistakes in their lives. And it's really important that they're able to come back from whatever path that they've taken to come back into the community and also, work to improve themselves as well. That's really, really muhim or important. So if we move on to the next one. So this is something I kind of wanted to end with, which is really the gangs matrix, which was a response to the 2011 riots, which happened not far from here, Tottenham High Road, or started there. Individuals are often, considered to be gang nominals, and they're given a colour. So, for example, green, amber, or red in terms of how violent they are. This has also been found to be against like human rights. Amnesty International has done some research on the gangs matrix and have found that to be against people's human rights. So very often a lot of people are on the gangs matrix. A lot of the people do not know that they're on the gangs matrix. 3/4 of them are black, the youngest being 12 years old, and 99% of them are young males. So there's a very large number or representation of young Somali people who are involved in a gangs matrix, and a lot of them do not actually know about this, which is something really, really concerning. And I think it would be good to kind of educate and inform young people about measures such as the gangs matrix or other measures that are out there, because this is something that can definitely have an impact on their lives. And then finally on the in terms of conclusions, so through this slide and through the research that we've done, young Somali people are more at risk of being suspended from school at the highest rates due to the number of reasons that we mentioned. Young Somali people have been pushed out of the school, pushed out into the street through high housing mobility, into the criminal justice system, and also in prison. And for many young Somali people, they either end up in jail, such as, a lot of the young people who are fatally killed are often also killed by other young Somali people. A lot of them have had adverse, serious mental health issues when they come out, or even when they're part of the NEET community and haven't worked for 2 or 3 years, the person starts to lose confidence and becomes very withdrawn, as we've seen through the people in our community. And then sadly, the last one being, they end up being tragically killed, which has been shown on the slide today. So that's the conclusion of the research that we've done, and also some of the activities that we've been doing. I would now like to invite Khalid and also Abdul Pani, who are from an organization called Somali Speakers, to also engage in the discussion. Sorry? Yep, so Khalid.
Assalamu alaikum.
Let's switch on the lights.
I did that bit out. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna do it there. We take.
Yeah.
Should we put this board more here?
Sure.
Are you sure? Are we rolling? Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Khalid from Somali Speakers, a YouTube channel dedicated to be a voice for the voiceless. And today we had the pleasure and honor to be hosting this event with Rise Project. And basically, what me and Abdul Pani basically do, we just go to a spot in Speaker's Corner, highlight issues, speak about what's going on, current events, past events, and then what we started noticing, we started appearing on a channel called COE, Content Over Everything, and basically that's it. And then we just started building up a little rapport, and then a lot of the Somali viewers started asking us, why don't you do more Somali events and more Somali stuff to do with knife crime and Somali subjects? And so we branched off and made a channel, working with COE, working with DJ Riz behind the camera as usual. So and that's all I gotta say about it. And then I'm just gonna pass it to Abdul Pani so he can introduce himself, and then we speak about knife crime in the community as well.
So for those that don't know me, my name's Abdul Pani. It was a pleasure being here today and listening to Awale giving us his presentation. I learned a lot from the presentation, and there are some serious problems that do need to be resolved. And it's going to take a lot of work, but I don't really know what else to add to it, but it was good to learn, and hopefully I don't know really what else to say.
Basically, I think we're more into group discussions, and we're not really used to a whole room of people just looking at us. We're used to just in a crowd where a lot of people speak, and that's why we thought come along. So this is a rodeo for us. Literally, we started our channel on November the 5th. Obviously, I spoke to a couple of the aunties, spoke to a couple of the people. So we're just like a makeshift bootleg sort of gossip, speak, see what's going on, engage with the community. And knife crime, like you say, I was what really touched me was looking at the last couple of years, the figures of, so it's been growing, and like you said, this year alone was 10 Somali brothers. Just, was it yesterday in London Bridge? Just yesterday we saw a violent knife crime in London, and so it affects all types of communities as well. So I just thought, you know what, let me just, I bumped into Awala, was it about 2 months ago? Yeah. I was explaining the channel to him. He was like, you know what, let me see. He subscribed, he liked it. He said, well, I've got a problem just getting people through the door and people seeing what Rise Project's doing. And I said, I've got the total opposite problem to you guys. I've got a whole bunch of Somali community telling me, where is Somalis doing something? What is going on? Yeah. So that's hence I thought, you know what, as we say in Speaker's Corner, let's put something up together, let's chop it up. So hopefully we've chopped it up, spoke to Awala, spoke to the agency who owns this place. That hopefully we're looking to do this once a month as well. Get more people coming in, speaking about all issues that impact us home and abroad. That's what my channel is basically about. You're going to learn to love us, hate us, and love us. Because we're going to touch on various subjects that might not be up your street, you might not want to hear it. Well, I'm handsome, and it's about time Udken and like Udken. I think Somali, the thing is, like I was saying to you, Awala, as well, is are we a proactive community or are we a reactive community? I think to myself, like I said earlier, I think we're a reactive community. Yeah. We only react. We don't really tackle issues, and maybe it's because we are a new refugee community as well. Yeah. So that's has factors to play with it. Well, we are new. We've only been here since late 80s to early 90s. But again, I feel like we as a community love to complain about our problems. We like, as Abdul Pani and us, we noticed when we were talking about recent videos, Beledweyne, when we were trying to get all the brothers and sisters together, oh, come in. They're like, no, and then we started seeing the brothers and sisters talking about other issues and other nations and their problems. And I was trying to explain to them the other day, like, there's 100,000 Somalians that are displaced by a flood. So then we put it together. We said, you know what, let's just do our own channel, report on current news that affects us home and abroad. And while we're abroad, as the diaspora community, this knife crime, subhanallah, I'm not gonna lie to you, like every like once a month, you're saying 10, that's like once, out of 118 people. Once a month, as I'm saying, brother, it's like, you're losing a young brother. And while I was on my travels away on abroad, back home, I've noticed, I saw one literally Hoya from Camden, 2 in a space of a year, sons. And her, bro, come on, my people. It's about time we started speaking, started highlighting the issues that are affecting us. Yes. You get me? So, Somali speakers, like I say, you're going to love us, learn to hate us, then you're going to learn to love us, because we're going into it. One of the aunties here said, oh, we need to get more Somali males, or the Yashi. I say, the Yashi are the problem. If I had the option, well, I'm on Layla right now, but obviously off the mic, I can't say that. You could do that. Yeah. Now, don't even edit it. That's why, Somali speakers, we're focused on not editing. No, just raw from the heart, from the mouth to the camera. And it's freedom of speech, what we're doing. Sorry, I've monologued a little bit. That's me, Khalid, by the way. So I agree with Awala, and then hopefully Abdul Pani.
Yeah. And so as Khalid said, I think one thing we definitely have as a community is we're very reactive. So, organizations such as Somali Speakers, Rise Projects, we're going out there, we're trying to do the best that we can to engage the community, to create opportunities for young people the best way we can. So I think a lot of the times it's really down to us, for example. And as I mentioned in the slide, it's really important that we have more Somali parents who are involved in the school, as school governors, for example, more youth clubs, provisions, different activities for our young people. It's really down to us as a community to be able to help our young people, and also anyone who faces difficulty in our community. So we need to be more proactive and at the same time have more elected officials as well. And in Haringey, since we work in Haringey as an organisation, there are 57 councillors, and there's not a single Somali councillor in this borough. In other boroughs, such as like Tower Hamlets, you have Somali councillors, but who are also in the cabinet. In Camden, there are also Somali councillors. In Ealing, in fact, in Islington, the mayor is a Somali woman, and also in Ealing. So there's a lot of good people, in our community who are actively involved in trying to make a difference. And in terms of like this general election, I think there's only one Somali person who's contesting a seat, and I think is it in Kilburn?
There's a
I
guy
think
in Cardiff.
in Cardiff,
Muhammad
Ali, yeah.
He's there's a sister in Camden as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we have got an up and coming generation of politicians.
Yeah.
I had the privilege on the WhatsApp group. There's a sister called Faduma. She just graduated from university science. She's doing her thing. So she look out for her. Remember I said the name first, didn't it? So I feel like there is positives in our community, but the negative outweighs the positive, and that's something I'm trying to fight myself. Like every time I look up something Somali, it's just war, disaster, this. We don't see groups like Rise Project. And I remember when I was younger, there was Somali communities, but I felt like they weren't really engaging. And maybe that's a stigma with a lot of organizations that do try to help the Somali communities where others have failed. So in Somali speakers, we like to push the buttons, get the questions out there. So that's another thing I want, because maybe some of the community has felt in the past there is communities and haven't done. I remember my generation growing up, there was nothing really done. And when I looked on your Instagram, we were having a conversation. Well, you've got a problem bringing out your message out there to say, look, in Haringey, we're actively trying to work. But I had the other problem where I was getting bombarded by a lot of Somali brothers and sisters, even though some of the comments were a bit, why are you talking to other people about Somali problems? So hence, mashallah, we've got a couple of brothers and sisters here. We're going to do a little speakers corner, put people in have a little sofa, and then hopefully we could carry this momentum once a month, set up a date where brothers and sisters could come out here and debate. Sorry, Abdul Pani.
Very important.
Yeah, sure. A question just came to my mind because today I was watching a little YouTube video clip, right? And it was a guy who was from Chingford, right? He was from Chingford, and he was collecting knives. That was his role. He was just here to collect knives and stuff. And then he was complaining about in his particular borough that there was only one police station in his borough, basically, right? And how he was kind of thinking that was kind of contributing to the problem, because if there was perhaps maybe more police stations in his area, there would be more police involvement, etc. So, like, for me, this is like the first time I've come to Turnpike Lane, right? And I'm not too familiar with the North London area because I'm from East London, right? So I just wanted to ask you, bro, and just learn more and get more information, bro. Like, what is the police's involvement? How many police stations are involved? And what are they doing to, stop this problem or prevent this issue? That's just a question to you, my bro.
Yes, I think obviously there's been, I can't speak for the police because there's no police officer present here today or anyone from the Met Police, but we've had events in the past where the police officers have come. In fact, during National Hate Crime event last year, we had the only Somali police officer come to the Shine Centre. She was able to engage with the community. And in the past, we've had senior members of police officers come to our events and obviously engage with the community and find out what the issues are. So obviously, as I also said on the slide as well, there's a lot of factors involved in the whole knife crime, fatality, which is gone through the roof in more recent times, and in terms of the impact that it has on the Somali community as well. There's all these factors, each have a particular role to play. There's been cuts in terms of the numbers of police officers over the last 10 years. There's also been, I think, a reduction also in stop and search as well, because stop and search was perceived to be something that was very harmful and also very discriminatory to particular communities. So although more recently stop and search has increased as well. So the police cannot resolve our issues. We as a community need to be able to speak to our young people, engage them, work with them, and also families need support as well, not just from within the household, but also from other service provisions. And as Khalid mentioned, and also as I mentioned in the slide earlier on, we as a community are very reactive. So a lot of the times you can tell there's telltale signs that are having an impact on the young person's life. For example, you can tell when a young person will become more vulnerable or susceptible to particular pathways in life. So we need to be able to access early provision. And there's entire departments in the council whose sole job is to work with families who are, or what they call troubled families, for example. So those families need to be able to access those help. And also, I think there's also a lot of stigma in our community where people do not openly talk about their issues, and that's something that has a big impact. And there's been incidences where a young person, you know, has become involved in crime, and then they've been, you know, sent to prison, for example, and the parents would say this young person has gone to university outside of London, you know, or there might be other incidences where, you know, my son or my daughter has been, your son and daughter's really, you know, like the way they behave is not a reflection on the parent. You know, there's other factors at play as well. So we as a community need to be able to consider like what our involvement is and how we have the solutions. The solutions are definitely within us. And that's my view. And organizations such as yours and also Rice Projects and many other organizations are doing wonderful work, but people need to be aware and people need to be able to come to the events and get involved and support the community and other community activities. Yeah.
This is where, you know, I like to play devil's advocate right here. Where I like to say, kind of disagree with Abdi with the whole policing sort of thing, because, you know, I'm from the hood. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'll keep it real. And one thing I wanted to speak about is, don't you think that I was talking about, I think it's more to do with self. I think us Somalis, we have to start taking initiative for our own community as well. Because I think it's always easy to blame other people for our mistakes and, oh, why we not... If, like, one of the aunties just left, she said, you need to get more of the y'all involved. We need to... To me, I've always been an individual that believes in do it yourself. Everything has to be self-done, do it yourself. And I've, like you're saying, you know, school to pipeline. I'm going to open up and admit I've been one of them people that got expelled, went to school, went to prison for a violent crime, GBH, come out, helped myself, get back rehabilitated by myself. I'm not gonna, and I believe in self, but I believe the wider aspect for, the wider aspect for a community, it has to be more as I don't think we're a cohesive community. So that's more of the problem that I kind of face, where it's motivating, getting Somali people, girls and guys even involved, even the conversations, discussions, come out, support your community, where just supporting other communities is easier for our people. Like I say, that can but you got what happened to the love for your own community, because it starts from home. So I feel like maybe it's to do with, well, we've grown up here where you've come to such an individual country where everyone cares about themselves, or to me I'm trying to focus more on that. And with the knife crime issue, I feel like just the other day, I had one of the brothers come up to me. This was about a couple of months ago. He's just come out of Habsi, and one of Habsi means jail, by the way, from the non-smart audience. You know, I have to flip it up. And one of his main concerns is, Khalid, I don't want to get back into how can I move away? And I think that's one other thing is a lot of the brothers and sisters, there's a couple of sisters that are now having criminal records are going inside as well. So it's like you say, once someone has gone through that bad road, our community isolates them as well. And it's like, oh, well, Kirdi blogger, Kirdi blogger badam, where sometimes it's hard for them to, you know. And I feel like, you know, if the village ignores a child, that child will come back and burn the whole village. And that's what our community needs to start realizing, where from teacher they're going to say teacher kasab to in or what's in mental hospitals and issues, they all count the same. And I feel like that's one thing our community needs to stop this stigma of, oh, it's not going to happen to me. But when it does happen to you, you do want your community around you to uplift you and to bring you out of this. So that's questions that I have for our community. Are we a community that's died amongst ourselves, or have we forgot? And that's what mainly Somali Speakers is going to be about, speaking about what is going on. So, and it was refreshing coming to this, because we were being bombarded, like, trust the comments and everything. Do something about Somalia. And now with Awala, and from inshallah for the future, we're going to be hosting once a month where we do something like this, where it's discussions, and just spread it out. So in 10 Park Lane, they're going to be doing this once a month. Hopefully, sometimes we have to be the revolution. You have to start the revolution to get our people to start talking, start opening up. Because even our nation itself, I like to use Rwanda as an example. Rwanda went through a horrible genocide and fixed the nation up. With one of the key elements were they give free counselling to their people. So I feel like our people need to start speaking, issuing their problems, and start saying, yo, this is what's affecting me and my household. This is why I can't control my son or my daughter. Maybe someone else could inspire you, give you an idea, maybe give you a method, maybe show you a RISE project. They could go somewhere where there's an after-school club, or there's something they do, activities where you're not alone, you're not alone. Maybe we need to start looking at helping brothers and sisters to rehabilitate their lives as well, to say, you know what, okay, it's not that bad. You've come out of jail, you have got a criminal record, but you can move into industries that can help you. And I'm sure there's industries out there that we can to work with. So that's a couple of things, and it's a pleasure just jumping on board. You know, you got our support. Anytime you want to do a video, we chop, like I said, we'll chop it up, throw it up on YouTube. And we're going to be proud of not editing. That's one thing you're thinking, oh my God, these guys, what are they doing? But, you know, you'll see in the long run, you know? So that's what it is, man. It was a pleasure.
I just wanted to clarify that point, Bo. You said I wasn't suggesting that the police is the solution. It was just after watching that video with the community leader who suggested that there wasn't enough police involvement. I just merely presented that. Could that be an option in resolving the Somali community? Just to clarify any misunderstandings, you know. It's really.
If we had police from the local area, then it would be a lot different than someone coming from Stafford, not Stratford East, Stafford, like up north, or coming from outside London, coming in and already coming in with their idea of how a young black boy is meant to act, and that one, and he's already coming with the idea. So it would be a different story if they're coming with people that grew up in the area, and then they were police station. I don't know, because of security rules or whatever, they don't really place people from the local area in their local thing. I don't really see a lot of police officers from North London, and I've had a lot of interaction with them, unfortunately. But some good, some bad. I'm on the simple. I would say personally with the police thing. But then a lot of the bullet points was very good. I'll say there's a lot of things between where this is just affecting the whole community as a whole, black, white, Asian, whatever. And then there's specific things that affect Somalis in particular, where it will be coming as a refugee and then just building back where you don't know I'm Somalian. Like I'm Somalian, I'm 100% Somalian. Like if anyone asks me, I'm from Somalian. But then like
all these labels.
I'm from London. I'm 32. I came when I was 5. I haven't gone back. So it's really, how Somalian am I? That's the question. So it will be one of them ones. So really, I think that's a lot of what we need to address. Really.
That's it. And that's what the main things what Somali speakers are going to be doing, just highlighting issues where we're labelled, labelling, what are we, do we need to be labelled, can we just be Somalis ourselves and handle our own issues ourselves, and you know what, projects like this, inshallah, may this grow, inshallah, may Allah help you with this, and you're doing a righteous job, and we need to see more of this. And Somali speakers, what we're going to be doing is speaking more and getting more involved and finding out a lot about it, and keep it once a month.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a large number of our team here today as well. So although I was presenting, there's people, you know, who are behind the camera right now who've done a fantastic job. So thank you very much to them as well. Yeah.
That's it, basically. That's a wrap.
Yeah, should we do a little group discussion?
We're going to do a group discussion.
Content over everything. From now to
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
The conquest of
Listen.
Man, don't listen to Islam did not make the kind of inroads throughout the entire subcontinent, as you might have suspected. As you might have expected. And then I look at the same Japan with Christianity, and I look at the fact that both societies were literate.